Employee of the Year, Episode 1, Finale. Chet's brain begged him to retreat once his nose met the confusing melange of odors. Chet could say nothing more. His eyes started to water. He pinched his nose and held his breath. "Let yourself acclimate," Mr. Farrow suggested. Chet released his nose and took a shallow breath. He smelled tar, rot, musk, smoke. His gut twisted with nausea, but Chet took another breath. He smelled sharp spices, soft spices. He smelled something bitter. He detected a hint of something that reminded him of coffee or urine. Chet forced a third, deeper breath. He smelled meat. "Burgers," Chet whispered. Chet wiped the tears from his eyes. "I'm in a food court," he realized. His gaze snapped to the Burger Zone logo along the far wall. The registers looked identical to those in South Dakota. "Interesting fact," said Mr. Farrow. "Among the 45,000 Burger Zone locations in the world, this is only the 11th in a food court." The man's voice sounded small through the buzzing in Chet's ears. "I'm the intergalactic face of Burger Zone," Chet whispered. "Yes, pick your register and let's get started." The scene carried Chet back home. He could hear Steve growling at the cooks in the kitchen, and the rumble of trucks and motorcycles along the highway. He could hear the hiss of meat over the grill. He could look outside and see the flat, dry South Dakota landscape. And then Beatrix emerged from the kitchen. Chet imagined that she pulled back the hood of her hoodie and grabbed a burger from beneath the heat lamp. He imagined himself behind those registers. He imagined that she paid for that burger with a shrug and a smirk. Chet touched his pocket and felt for the 9 quarters he kept on reserve to cover the expense of her burger. His first mate fund, he called it. Beatrix leaned against the wall and pushed the burger between her lips. Chet moved deeper into his vision like a moth drawn toward the light. That there were dozens of alien restaurants in the food court didn't matter. He saw only Burger Zone and Beatrix. Chet bumped into the Burger Zone counter, and everything reset. South Dakota, Steve, and the sounds from the highway retreated into some corner of Chet's memory. But Beatrix remained. Chet smiled at her. Before he could think of anything to say, a large hologram of his head appeared over the Burger Zone counter and boomed, authentic human cuisine." Chet gasped. The hologram looked around, grinned, and vanished. "I hate that thing," Beatrix said. Chet's smile slipped. "You do?" "Who exactly are you?" Mr. Farrow asked. "How did you get here?" Beatrix crossed her arms and shifted her glare between Chet and Mr. Farrow. "Came up with the old man yesterday. Who are you?" "It's just that we had decided to bring only one human employee to save expenses," Mr. Farrow explained. "Oh," said Beatrix. "Guess that old man decided different." She fixed her eyes on Chet. "Speaking of that, you want to tell me where he got that idea?" The CEO's voice echoed through Chet's mind. "Also, I promised to help Mr. Eubanks find love." Chet winced. "It's difficult to explain." "Yes, I'm curious as well," Mr. Farrow whimpered. The man's eyes widened as if something had occurred to him. Chet remembered that he had told Mr. Farrow about the arrangement he had made with the CEO. "Is she—" Mr. Farrow started. Chet cut him off. "She's here," he said. "Jesus," Beatrix swore. "Some old guy chases me into the girls' room, locks the door, and pretends his finger is a gun, then tells me he's going to put a bullet in my liver if I don't give him a listen. Almost decked him." She narrowed her eyes. "Says I come highly recommended by you. What the hell's that supposed to mean? We ain't never worked together. We barely even know each other." Chet cringed. You're what? You're sick? Maybe wondering what you were thinking agreeing to come here? Or maybe you're feeling guilty for getting me sucked into this thing too." "You didn't agree to be here?" Mr. Farrow inquired. "Course I agreed. Nobody's going to force me to do anything. Decided I need some time away from my dad. I hoped it'd be better than South Dakota. Now that I see it's not, I've been trying to figure out what I did to deserve this." She shoved another bite into her mouth and snarled, "And Chet's got nothing to say." Chet wiped the sweat from his brow. Had this been one of his fantasies, he would have had a dozen brilliant things dancing on the tip of his tongue. Chet let out a nervous laugh. Guess I've got 3 years to figure something out. Beatrix's scowl deepened. Well, you can just go to hell, Mr. Employee of the Year. The end of Employee of the Year, Episode 1. Written by Jeremy M. Gottwig and narrated by the author. Copyright 2016. I will be back next week with the beginning of Employee of the Year, Episode 2. Chet Eubanks is Mr. Meat. More information at strangeshuttle.com. All one word, strangeshuttle.com.